Hello and welcome to the Property Forum Chatshow with myself, Nicholas Wallwork, investor, developer and owner of propertyforum.com. On today's show, we'll be focusing on how landlords can save time and money. We'll be answering questions on how property investors can reduce their upfront costs and expenditure on their next rental property, how they can find great tenants without paying high street letting agent fees, and how landlords can grow their property portfolio in a hassle-free way using crowdfunding. If you haven't seen our show before, each episode is based around a particular area of property investment. And our expert panel takes questions directly from members of our online property forum. If you'd like to get involved in a future episode of this show and have your questions answered by one of our expert panelists, simply log on to propertyforum.com and sign up for free and start posting your questions. Even if your questions don't make it onto the show, our 60,000 forum members are always on hand and ready to share their experiences and guidance. We look forward to meeting you on the forum and we hope you enjoy the show. Today's experts helping us answer your questions are James Davis, CEO of UPAD, the UK's largest online letting agent, and Tracy Woods, founder of Landlord Smart, furniture leasing experts. And finally, Ben Groves, MD of Property Moose, leading crowdfunding platform. Firstly, I'd like to welcome James Davis, the CEO of the online letting agent UPAD, to the show. Welcome, James, and thank you for joining me on the show today.
Thank you very much indeed, Nick, for having me along.
So today's show's all about saving landlords time and money with their investments. That seems to be the epitome of UPAD's service. So could you tell me a little bit more about your business, please?
Sure, and I think you're absolutely right, Nick. What we found at UPAD is that most landlords are doing so in their spare time, and therefore I think they need a lot of assistance and support on keeping up to date with legislation and changes in regulation, so they're being compliant. But also in a big area we focus on is how to advertise your property online speedily and minimise those void periods. And all the insights we've had over the last few years will allow us to make sure your property stands out online. We can talk through what type of photographs work best so you can minimise those void periods, which I don't think any landlord actually likes.
No, and not everyone's a marketing expert, so getting those tips and tricks is really useful, I imagine.
It's absolutely right, Nick. Actually being a digital marketeer in today's market is far more important than anything else. Yeah. Interestingly, 56% of all tenants look on their mobile devices for their next rental. Wow, okay. And when you're using the Rightmove or the Zoopla app, which is what majority of tenants are doing, all you see first of all is photographs. So if you don't have any images or they're poor quality, just taken on your phone, you're going to have this swipe effect that I've sort of created, and they'll just move to the next property down on the list. So creating standout with really good images and first impressions are really important.
Super important. And are you a landlord yourself? Does this come from experience?
Yeah, so I've been a landlord for the last 18 years or so. Got properties in northwest London and also in Swansea. And it was off the back of being a landlord that I set up the business. Okay. I suppose I got frustrated with classified listings online like Gumtree, which I just found the quality of inquiries you were getting was quite poor. Yeah. And I also believe it's important to be an active landlord and do your own viewings, to manage the property yourself. I use my own tenancy agreement, but it meant if you're using an agent, you were still paying the full price, despite the fact you were doing some of it yourself. Yeah, and that was very much the rationale why we started UPAD a few years ago.
Okay, well, let's jump to some questions directly off the forum now, if I may. So we've got a question here from David from Bristol. Everyone seems to be moving to offering online services as an alternative to traditional high street solutions, such as estate agents and letting agents, for example. But how does the money you save with an online solution compare with the additional responsibilities you might then need to manage yourself, for example, viewings and check-ins are the examples?
Sure. So I think there's two interesting bits, and I think landlords at large, wherever they are in the UK, have to play catch-up with tenant behaviour. And what I mean by that is 92% of all tenants are now looking online for the next rental. So it's almost where, as landlords, we need to go and play to go and find our prospective tenants for our next rental property. Yeah. And as far as viewings are concerned, I'm a believer that they're really important to do yourself as a landlord for two key reasons. First of all, that gut feel factor when you meet somebody and you ask them what their take-home pay is, why do they like this property, have they lived with these other tenants before? How they respond to that is worth 1,000 times more than what a tenant referencing form will ever say to somebody.
Definitely, yeah.
And the other bit, from some research we did ourselves, is that 9 out of 10 tenants would rather let directly from a landlord than through an agent. So if you're doing the viewings yourself and then put it in your advert in sort of capital letters, let directly from the landlord, you're going to really appeal to what tenants are looking for in today's marketplace. So it seems a smart thing to do based on tenant behaviour today.
It's kind of showing the tenants that you're the landlord, you're the direct point of contact. They feel comfortable with that they can, if there's an issue with the property, they know exactly who to come to. They're not sort of shielded by agents.
Exactly that. I think the average property in the UK has about 5 instances of something going wrong, whether it's the key's not working in the boiler, what have you. And therefore, it's, I think, really important for tenants to know they've got somebody to go to when there is an issue, and having the direct contact with you as the landlord, because agents have got a bit of a bad name for themselves, is really important, and it will put you in pole position over all other properties that are being advertised online at the moment too.
Definitely, no, it makes a lot of sense. So let's move on to the next question. We've got one from Simon from Cambridge, would like to ask, I've just purchased my first HMO investment, that's a house of multiple occupancy, and my biggest concern is void periods. What can I do to give myself the best chance of minimising void periods with a 5-bed HMO?
So congratulations, Simon, on making that plunge there.
Indeed.
I think in the marketplace, we all probably know there are more tenants than properties out there at the moment. But I think sometimes people have void periods unnecessarily. And I think this is down to how they present their property when they're advertising it. Now, most tenants, 92%, are looking online for their next rental. And it's actually less about the price that you're advertising at and more about the way it looks and the presentation. What I would recommend is that he sets up an alert on Rightmove for properties in his locality to see how they are being presented online. And over a couple of months, you'll build up an understanding about what you need to do to make your property stand out compared to the competition.
Okay, see what's working and how long the ads are staying on, things
It's
like
exactly that. And I would very much focus on the photographs and see what other people are putting in there. But 3 top tips, I would say use somewhere between 9 and 12 photographs in total. Lead with an internal shot of your property, maybe the living room or the kitchen, as that main photograph, because tenants want to visualise what it looks like to live in the place, not just stare at it from the street.
Probably more important for the inside, isn't it?
Exactly.
I would say,
and have at least one internal shot for each main room of the property.
Okay.
But the presentation, especially photography, is probably the key aspect landlords should be looking at because of the way tenants are looking for their next rental.
Okay, sounds good. And that sort of leads on a little bit to Andrea's question. She's actually over in Barcelona. How can I make my rental property stand out from others in the area? So you sort of answered that there, but I think, I'm not going to answer it for you, but dressing the inside appropriately and things like that, I guess.
I don't know whether you've read my mind on that one. So there's nothing, it's quite hard as a landlord sometimes when you're advertising your place to get photographs done if you've got a tenant already in situ.
Yeah, I always struggle with that.
It might actually be worth waiting until they move out, get the place cleaned up, get it dressed as well with furniture in there and make it more livable. We actually did an experiment with one of my rentals that I just renovated. And rather than rushing to get it on Rightmove, we took our time, we let the builders finish, got it all cleaned up, we got it completely dressed. And the images with furniture in there, so a bit like a show home that new developers do, got 4 times more inquiries than if it was just empty. So consider going down that road to make your place stand out more so. And the other bit I would probably suggest is to invest in sort of professional photography. Generally where you use that wide-angle camera lens, because that makes that bathroom or that 3rd bedroom look a lot bigger and better than it otherwise would do. And given that's how tenants are looking for rentals, it's probably your best investment you can possibly make. And your digital camera, if you do it yourself, is tax deductible.
Yeah, oh, well, a good bit of tax advice at the end there. Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
No worries, thank you.
There's some excellent advice for landlords to consider before letting their next property from James Davis, the CEO of UPAD. Next up, I'd like to invite Tracy Woods to join us. Tracy is from Landlord Smart, who are furniture leasing specialists. She's here to give us more of an insight into how to save capital when carrying out your property developments. Welcome to the show today, Tracy.
Thank you very much for inviting me to the show.
No problem. So your expertise is in saving landlords capital expenditure when they're buying and furnishing their properties. Could you tell me a little bit about your business, please?
Okay, so Landlord Smart as a business is providing lease finance into the world of property. We're a very new business that literally launched the early part of last year.
Blazing a trail.
Yeah, absolutely. We were the first into the market. the world of lease finance has been around for the commercial sector for a long time, but never seen within the world of property and for traditional landlords out there. So it was opening up a market that already existed in another sector. Leasing, everybody thinks about leasing cars, for example, but this was opening up a brand new sector, and literally the first ones to the market doing it.
That's always a good place to be, definitely. I've never thought of it until we met you guys, so it's a very interesting area, and I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people. Do you lease your own furniture in your own properties, and you're a landlord yourself?
Well, unfortunately, the properties that I did were prior to the birth of Landlord Smart as a business, so I haven't actually used the service myself, but obviously we've got lots of customers that have used it, returning customers over and over again. It really does help them to build those portfolios without that capital investment. That's the key.
Absolutely, gives them a good head start. Okay, well now I've got some questions direct from the forum members for you. Firstly, from Dominic from Staines. He asks, I've only just heard of furniture leasing, which sounds like a potential better option for me to furnish my latest rental property. Can you tell me about the typical savings a landlord would make if choosing leasing furniture as opposed to buying it?
Okay, so the simple answer to that is that they don't have to put the capital in up front. So that's always the biggest cost of furnishing a project. So you don't need the money up front. The lease finance pays for the items. And the other benefit to you as a landlord is that you can offset every monthly payment that you make for the lease over a 3-year term as an expense to your business before tax. So it's very tax efficient for you. It's not a capital cost, it becomes a revenue expense to your business. And they're the major benefits.
Okay, that sounds really interesting. Second question is from Ali from Wembley. I'm planning to rent my next property fully furnished. How detailed should I go with the furnishings? What do tenants expect? And which type of furniture is considered essential? And what could I get away with, not buying? So it's more about sort of how should he furnish it?
Yeah, so the key to this really, and I can only speak from my own experience of providing furnished accommodation to the market, and obviously from my customers that are within different sectors. I believe the key, and I'm sure you'll back me up on this, is that you need to understand who your tenant is straight away.
Yeah, James and I were just discussing this about how to present it for the photos and things like that online. So
exactly, it's a very different market. If you take students right up to the serviced accommodation model, where you've got people coming in on a short stay, they can be very different in what you actually need to put into the property.
We need cutlery and stuff, won't you, for a nightly let potentially.
Understanding your tenant and what they're going to need. Things like a desk, for example, for a student or even a professional market, they're quite key because people do want to work, they want to have somewhere they can sit, put their laptop, that sort of thing. The basics are always going to be your bed, chest of drawers. Storage is, again, another.
And I'll just add into that is we're in this cash-rich, time-poor world at the moment, and the amount of tenants I've shown around, and they just want to take everything because we've sort of got fed up going to IKEA 3 Saturday nights on the trot to get your stuff. So I think it helps minimise your void periods, and also I think you get between 10 and 30% more rent as well for a fully furnished compared to an unfurnished property. So a load of stuff to consider in the new market.
Okay, great. We're just going to pop to a quick break. Welcome back to the Property Forum Chat Show. Now a question from Louise from Cardiff. With furniture leasing, are you tied into lengthy contracts? What happens if you want to end a furniture lease agreement and some of the furniture has wear and tear damage? Would you be charged for the damage?
Okay, so I touched on this earlier. The standard lease term is 3 years. Hence, us working with suppliers that provide a guarantee for those 3 years. So we deem that those assets will still be usable at the end of a 3-year term. Obviously, wear and tear is something that happens for all of us when we're providing furniture. If you get quality initially, then you shouldn't experience too much of that. But you're paying for the furniture during that 3-year term. If you want to cut that early, then you will still be paying the full amount of the lease. So you can finish it early. But with regard to the wear and tear side of things, you can go on to replace those items. If there's any damage to the goods, could be covered by your supplier's guarantee if it
Sure,
is
okay.
damage, as in something's gone wrong, or if it's tenant damage, then you've got things like your insurance, which you need to cover, and also your tenant deposits that you should be taking.
Yeah, so kind of treat it like the furniture's bought up front as you would normally. So
Yeah, and I think what I'd also throw in, Nick, is that I think it's important for viewers to be aware that wear and tear throughout the term is allowed, and obviously the amount of wear and tear is
normal.
based on the length of the tenancy and who's in it.
Yeah.
Two young professionals or a family with young kids and a dog.
or students.
So that is expected, but I think also if there's any damage done to the property or any of the sofas or what have you, is then you can make a claim against your tenant's deposit to recover that money.
Makes sense.
Worth bearing in mind.
Definitely. Okay. Well, thanks very much for those useful insights, Tracy.
You're welcome.
And next up on the show, we've got Ben. Hi, Ben, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
No problem. So crowdfunding is definitely becoming more mainstream. And I understand you guys were one of the first into the market. So
Yeah, we were.
How did that come about?
I guess being one of the first property crowdfunding platforms that actually got investment from an equity crowdfunding platform, it put us into the sort of the right area to feel the change in the market. I think people are now starting to really appreciate that crowdfunding is here to stay.
Yeah.
And I think the trust that we've built up over the time that we've been here has sort of helped us to notice where the platforms are starting to go.
That's very interesting. It's certainly something that everyone's talking about, and investors that haven't used it before are starting to look at it as a potential option to raise capital. So it's-
Yeah, I guess it really opened it up to sort of, everybody. I mean, don't get me wrong, we vet every single want-to-be investor that comes onto our site. We've got a lot of sort of due diligence checks that we do, ID checks, etc. So you can't just come onto the site at 18 years old and start putting your money in. But if you are an investor and you understand the risks, I think that's the most important thing. Yeah, you can come onto the site, you can invest £100 and you can spread that investment across 10 different types of investments, whether that be loans or property, shares in property, anything.
Brilliant. And do you invest in crowdfunding yourself?
Sadly, I can't, as much as I'd like to, I can't invest on our site without obviously making it absolutely clear that I am connected to the company,
Understood, yeah.
which has its own frustrations, but at least our clients know that we're not being biased.
Well, I guess it's can be tricky seeing some great opportunities come and go, but you've got to.
Yeah, I was actually saying this to our ops
stay
director
removed.
yesterday. There's one in particular, which I won't say, but there's one in particular that if I could, I would.
Yeah, it's a
but
no-brainer
no,
kind
we're
of thing.
FCA regulated, so we have to be very, very careful of what we say and what we do.
No,
So-
I can appreciate that. Well, let's jump into some forum questions direct from our users, if I may. The first question is from Harry from Manchester.
Yep.
He asked, do you think property crowdfunding will replace traditional property investment in the future? And if yes, why? And if not, why not, I guess?
Okay, so I think it would be unfair of me to say that it will replace. I think there's a place for everybody. Like I was saying earlier, the one thing that it has done, it's opened up the market to a much wider audience of people
So
because of
mass
the lower
market
entry level.
almost, yeah.
I mean, a lot of people, take myself, for example, investing in property full stop, a lot of people, it is probably one of the biggest financial risks they'll ever take as
Sure.
far as the amount of money we're talking about. And if you're investing into one specific unit or, product, office, land, whatever it might be, all of that capital is at risk. And some people will actually get themselves into debt to make that happen.
Yeah, I've heard of people buying properties and deposits on credit cards and things, which
Yeah,
is
yeah,
a
it
fairly risky
happens.
strategy, but it's,
Yeah, and I think
Can
when
work
you're involved in the property market anyway, you definitely would go away and do your own due diligence and make sure that everything stacks up. But no one can guarantee, investment is a risk. There's no way of getting around that. So as long as you understand the risks and you do your due diligence, then I'm sure everything will work out just fine. But what property crowdfunding does is it allows you to not only invest at a smaller ticket entry price from as little as £10 where we're concerned, but also diversifying the investment. So let's say you have £1,000 and you want to spend £100 in 10 different disciplines.
Yep.
You're spreading your risk, you're diversifying. So
Okay.
if you were to have half of that risk fail, you've still got 50% of the risk working for you.
Okay.
It's
There's
very
a
rare.
mini portfolio, if you
Yeah,
like.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of what our technology does, it allows people to manage that in a very efficient way. I mean, it's certainly something we've got 26,000 investors in over 130 countries. So
Wow.
certainly what we do would be able to stack up and say, yes, there is a global demand for what we do. But could we manage that without the technology backing it up? Absolutely not. If you've got 300 people investing in one property, you've really got to communicate with these people. So the system allows us to manage that effectively.
Yeah, okay, that's very interesting. Eric from France would like to know, having a lack of personal control over investment in a property crowdfunding project is a concern to me. Are you kept in the loop throughout the process of a project at all times?
Good technology just makes manual processes more efficient.
Yeah.
That's not just our industry, but across the board, I would like to think. And really the communication that we have with our investors on our particular platform, for example, something as simple as, if money needs to be spent. In traditional terms, you'd probably have an agreement with your agent where you say if it's below £50, just get it done. Anything above £50, you need to let us know so we can make a choice. The way that we do it is essentially the same, but everything is managed by a piece of technology that will then go out and find 3 quotes for the work. It will then present that finding to the investors. They can then vote with something as simple as looking at an email on the phone, reading through the content, and then clicking what they want to do. So you do have ultimate control. But then equally, if you weren't to read the email, for example, if it was to sort of get you by, then it would always go with the majority of the shareholders. And obviously everybody is just as much interested in the property as you have. Everyone wants the best for their investment. So we'd like to think that by way of reading through the information that we put forward, that the best decisions are made. And obviously we would then get on and do the work and make sure the investment is sound.
Last question is from Michelle from Stevenage. Realistically, could you make as much money purely from investing in property crowdfunding over 10 years than you could by investing in general or in a property direct, say?
Yeah, really good question. If I was to put that into reverse, so could I earn more money doing traditional investments over 10 years? The simple answer is I can't answer that question. Investments are a risk. There are no guarantees.
All differ,
Exactly. And it's very difficult to predict what is going to happen in a year, let alone 10 years' time. Going back to what we were saying on the sofa a minute ago, as long as you do your own due diligence, you understand the risks, and you're investing an amount of money that is right for you, then it's going to be something you feel comfortable with. And therefore, if you do make a profit from him, it's something that you can settle with.
Yeah, makes sense.
And I think look at trends, what's occurring in different areas, what's happening in the northeast versus the south coast. It's really important to see what is going on, what's happening in the student market, for example, and wherever you may be investing, just to try and forecast where that's going to be going over the next few years, rather than just acting blind. It's the $1 million question of what's the best thing to do without a
When's the
crystal
top
ball.
of the market? Where do I invest at the right
Especially
time?
nationally as well, because what happens, like for example, a lot of the properties that we have in the northwest, it is a very low ticket value for a property. You can buy a 3-bed house for £30,000, for example. And the rental yield is incredibly high when you compare it to something in London, because you'd have to spend £500,000 to get the same property.
1-bed flat.
And the rent yield would be lower. But you really do need to understand your local area. This is the thing we were doing the other day, where we found out that actually, even though we have a national portfolio of investors, predominantly the investors that we have are within 12 miles of the properties that are on the market.
Oh, really?
Because they feel comfortable knowing that if they want to, they can jump in a car and they can drive past and they can see it, for example. And then equally,
so that obviously plays a big part that James
I
mentioned.
think that goes with it's different things for different people, obviously. Some people feel comfortable, and obviously the overseas investors, they don't want to drive
They don't
particularly mind about driving past. It's in County Durham, for example. But I think there is a degree of comfort in the fact that you can do that if you want to.
Okay, no, that's useful. Thank you very much for those insights. And
not at all.
Thank you very much to all of you for joining me on the show today.
No problem.
Welcome.
And thanks to the viewers at home for watching. If any of today's chats have sparked questions around buying investment property or in property overseas, please pop online to propertyforum.com, where you can leave your questions for myself and our resident experts to answer. Thank you for watching the Property Forum Chat Show, the place to talk property.